Good afternoon and welcome to a special workshop meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. Today is Wednesday, September 23rd. It is 2 p.m. Due to the COVID-19, there will be no physical meeting location per the Washington Proclamation 20-28. This meeting may be viewed live via YouTube. And to listen to the live meeting, please call the following number, 623-404-9000. And the meeting ID number is 149-766-1467. So I am going to turn the meeting to our city clerk in just one moment. We have experienced some technical difficulty already with our equipment and may, because of the wind outside today, may be experiencing more. Please bear with us. I have been notified by two of our city council members that one has a conflicting appointment at 2 o'clock and intends to join us later, and that's Councilor Hayes, and then Councilor Wiesner is having some technical difficulties with the Wi-Fi where he is located at, but he intends to be joining us later also. So with that said, I'm going to ask our city clerk, Julie Lindsay, to do a roll call for the remaining city council members, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Yeah, I see your hand.
Thank you. Council Member Mack. Council Member Servadius. Council Member Wassinger. Council Member Goebel. Thank you, Mayor. We have 5 of the 7 currently present in the meeting.
Okay, great. Welcome, Council.
Excuse me, Council Member Mack. I've been muted on your end, but I'm present.
Okay. We got that loud and clear. Thank you, Councilor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor.
So we have a fairly extensive agenda. I'd like to remind staff and council that these meetings are generally scheduled to be over in a couple of hours or 3 hours, thereabouts. We may have to move quickly on some of these items to keep up with that agenda, but to begin with, we have a couple of action items, and I think the first will come from our legal department regarding the purchase and sale agreement, which is actually a Navy easement. So rather than an actual purchase sale, it's an easement. So, Anna, what's,
Both of them are consent agenda.
oh, they're both consent agenda items. I'm sorry. The second item then is wet fiber agreement with the city of Anacortes. So, does council have any questions about those items, either of those items? And if not, then they'll be approved as presented. Looks like we've got a hand up from Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Pro Tem Munns?
Thank you, Mayor. I know we have 2 action items. I sent an email on Monday why the youth sailing storage building couldn't also be an action item today, because it's another 2 weeks before, I mean, it's just more time. And I didn't hear back from anyone.
I know that we have that.
This meeting is being recorded.
I know that we have some information on the youth sailing building that will be presented later on this agenda. I think it'll help answer that question. So Anna Thompson and our legal department is prepared to speak to that. Any other, okay, Councilor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say, obviously, I wholeheartedly support the wet fiber agreement. It's been almost a year in the making to get this pulled together. So very excited about the potential for that. I know we're on a limited time, so I don't want to spend any more time talking about the potential possibilities of that. At really no cost to the city, but just glad to finally see that come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. So seeing, I guess, no other questions at this point, those items will be passed as presented. We will now move to the Arts Commission, and this afternoon, who's speaking to that?
We should have Roderick, he's already,
Okay, we have
Roderick Feldman.
Roderick, our Arts Commission Chair, Chairman of our Arts Commission. Roderick, welcome.
Mayor, council members, I'll make it real quick here. So we've got the sculpture piece entitled Tau that was purchased a couple of months ago. When we scouted out possible locations for placement, the Arts Commission voted unanimously to place the sculpture at the Scenic Heights Trailhead. We also brought that to the Parks Board to get a feel for what they thought. And they also voted unanimously for placing it at the Scenic Heights Trailhead. And so we're bringing it to you today to ask to put this to a vote so we can officially have this piece installed.
So I think that we're not actually voting on that.
And so I'm open for any questions that you have.
We're looking for input or questions about that. We're not actually voting, Roderick, today.
Yep, sorry. Yep, absolutely.
Mayor Pro Tem Munt. Not hearing her. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. My question is to the arts, where your placement is in the middle of that round plaza, the square. Have you ever stood in there and talked? If you put that sculpture there, I think it will ruin that harmony kind of effect you get when you stand there and you talk. So I'm just thinking that there's a piece of grass just off to the left before you get to that round plaza. That would be to the left of that tree that is growing there. Maybe that would be better. But I don't know how many people have stood in there and had fun either singing or talking or whatever. It is a very harmonic sound. And if you have the sculpture there, then it wouldn't be the same, I don't believe. But I could be wrong.
Okay, we'll take that under advisement. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. I had the exact same comment as Mayor Pro Tem. It was very fun with our kids to go down there. We still do it occasionally. If you have not stood in the center of that, the echo, I think it's an echo, is very unique. So I support the Tau sculpture going down there somewhere. But I would encourage the members of the Arts Commission, if they haven't experienced that or they weren't aware of it, to go stand in the center of that. And it's a really cool little echo chamber. It has its own artistic flair in and of itself. So please consider that. But otherwise, I support a location down there somewhere. But I too think that probably the grass might be a better location because you'll get two features for one down there. And by placing that in the center, it might omit that effect, that acoustic effect that occurs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Any other inputs or questions? What's that? No,
Cynthia Mason.
okay, we
From the
have
Arts Cynthia.
Cynthia Mason was here as a guest also.
I just had a comment, Mayor, if I could. I met with Hank before he retired about the placement, and this is the wrong supporting document. In fact, the proposed site is on the grass, and there was actually 2 pads, small pads, matching the brick of that larger center presented. And the towel would go on either side, which would lend for that storyboard to be changed. So when you're standing above, you'd see the art piece with the storyboard outlining the details of the art piece.
Okay, so it's not designed to go in the middle.
Thanks, Cynthia. I appreciate that.
Sure.
So that might answer their concerns then, it sounds like. Any other input or questions? Okay, thank you for that. We will then move on to our next item is Development Services, RFP Hearing Examiner Update. And it looks to me like we've got Kak Kamak, our senior planner, here. Kak, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now, just now, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Oh, okay. Good. All right. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. This is hopefully the shortest presentation you'll have tonight. I don't have anything to add to the information in your packet. What we wanted to do is to just keep you updated on the recruitment process. We're going through some internal review. We're hoping that the RFP will be out by the end of this month. We'll use the month of October to get the proposals and review the proposals, and hopefully be able to share some of this information with the City Council in October and November. We'll probably be ready to act on it in November, but the latest would be probably December 1st. So we are on track to do this, and we just wanted to share that information with you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, any questions or input about the RFP hearing examiner? Okay, thank you, Kak.
Thank you.
That was a short presentation. We appreciate that. Thank you. So our next item is Oak Harbor Youth Sailing Storage Building Right of Entry dash amendment. And I think we've got our harbor master, I see for sure, but I believe Anna and legal department have certainly been working on that too. So not sure who's going to start this. Chris?
Yeah. Hi, Mayor. Hi, City Council members. This is a topic that we were hoping to put on the October 6th City Council meeting consent agenda. And we had a place put out. Originally, the building was scheduled or approved to go at the end of building 3. Subsequently, we've decided to move it to the end of building 4. So it was an amendment that way. But Anna stumbled on some great information, and she's going to share with you some really good news that just came to light this afternoon.
Anna?
Good afternoon, Council. Just wanted to let you know that I've been in touch with Byron with Youth Sailing, been in touch with the Navy. Brian Tyhouse has been assisting me with trying to get permission from the Navy. The shed remain on this corner at the marina. That would actually, it's actually, we found out actually that the property is owned by the city, but underlying that property is an easement for like utilities and access and such. And so the Navy is willing to work with us to grant permission for the Youth Sailing to put their shed in the desired location in the corner there at the marina. Provided that certain stipulations are met, and we're still working out some of the conditions and details since I just got off the phone with Brian about an hour ago. So that's where we are now. We're very hopeful that we can reach a resolution. And so I'm hopeful that we can get there. But it will take a few more weeks to, to work through the kinks and such.
And I think I can show you an image of this location just so everybody's clear. Share my screen. So the red box, that's my attempt at drawing the square, shows you how artistic I am. The red box kind of shows where the shed's going to be. You can see the Navy gas station to the right, our storage sheds to the left, and Mariner's Haven. So it's at the very, very end of what we call our fence line boat storage. And it's really a great location for us, and it's a great location for them. So my hat's off to Anna for tracking this down and getting this figured out, because I think it's a win-win for both groups. What we were going to bring to you was here at the end of building 4, which is less desirable to them and us than where this red box is. So, be happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Okay, let's see if we've got, okay, Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of questions. I guess an administration question is, I appreciated that Kamak wrote a response to Dr. Scooby's letter. Didn't answer everything, but he replied, and that Mr. Oburn sent it out, but I was puzzled why the Director of Development Services name wasn't on it. Is he being left out of the loop? I mean, I know he doesn't have the background information, but if we're transparent, that kind of bothered me, that I know that he, before he was hired, believed in having his people shine and show that they know what they know. But I'm just surprised that he didn't even get a copy of it. That's one question. And the second is, have we figured out how to make whole to youth sailing? There are several things that are amiss that I think should be considered financial obligation because the city messed up.
Ms. Munns, if I might jump in here. Right now, we are working on getting youth sailing what they need. And so with getting approval from the Navy, I think that that's going to satisfy both parties in this situation, provided that certain conditions can be met, like making sure that utilities, the utilities are not disturbed, and make sure that, the fence line is not, it's not obstructed, and that the gate is still accessible, and that Catalina Drive is still accessible. So I think that with this, we are going to be able to remedy some of those concerns.
Yes, I appreciate that. I know that in the placement, they figured out that the Navy gates could still be open, that no one could get on top of the shed and breach Navy property because that's a security issue. But what I'm talking about is they were given assurance by a department that they were good to go. They arranged a delivery and then was told on that delivery date that no, they don't have a business license, which should have been on a checklist from a department on what you need to do once you put the permit in. But they said, that's okay in 24 hours. Anyway, so there's money for that delivery because they couldn't finish it. There's money that they hadn't figured out for renting because they would have had all of their stuff into the shed. Now they've had to put building supplies into the shed, so their boats and the stuff for the youth are out in the open. And this is, X amount of dollars for a nonprofit. So I just the process has delayed and delayed and delayed. And I don't think it's not because they haven't let the city know exactly what they were doing. The city was not very clear in letting them know they forgot some wickets or forgot to research maps and things like that. So that's what I meant by making the whole thing. but that's it. Thank you. I appreciate the other very much and for all your work on making this work.
Okay, I noticed we do have our department head, Mr. Cool, here, and I don't know, I assume that you have communicated with CAC about this, at least to some degree. I don't know how involved you've been, but that was another concern that she had, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, we're trying to solve this problem, and I've worked together closely with our building official today, as well as Anna, and we've come up with solutions I think will work by siting the building permanently in the easement, which was not allowed before. That will take a letter from the Navy to allow us to do that, because even though we technically own the land, the Navy has an easement on our property. So once we get that letter from them, we can let the youth sailing group go ahead and put their building in once they get a building permit from us. And we understand that there were some complications earlier with business licensing and research that might not have been complete, but we're ready to move forward from here. And we think we have solutions to help people get what they want. And so that's usually what we try and do, is help people get what they want.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much, and I'm glad they kept you in the loop.
Councilor Servadius.
So first and foremost, I would like to say thank you to staff and or anyone else that was involved in hopefully finding a creative solution, whether that was volunteers in the Oak Harbor Youth Sailing reaching out to the Navy. I'm not sure who started those contacts, but I'm glad to see that we're moving forward. So that's the upside. The downside, I'm going to make a statement, and it may ruffle some of staff's feathers. I'm not going to apologize for that. I had the fairly unique opportunity to go down there. I was called up, and I went down there and helped move that shed out of the location where the materials had been dropped over to an empty storage shed. And it was really the first I had heard about this issue. And so I spent the afternoon down there with my son, Ben, moving the materials with some of the other volunteers, and started to try and develop an idea as to what had happened. And I got to say, I was frustrated. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to be a city council member, and I was embarrassed for our city with the way it had been handled. To be honest, honestly, we went through a training last month at our workshop, at our 826 workshop, and there was a section in there about negligent misrepresentation. And the lady from WCIA and our city attorney were on that call. And they told a story about a mayor in a city, a business owner wanted to put on some cedar siding. I guess they got the thumbs up from the mayor. They went ahead and did the whatever siding work. Anyway, that didn't follow code. And, but there was a problem there. And so when I went through all the documentation from Dr. Scooby, I talked to some of these folks to get more of the story. You know, we had an acting director of development services telling people, you'll have your permit by X time. And then they got a phone call and said, your permit is there. So I realized that there are rules that need to be followed, laws that need to be followed. But when I sat there and looked at the shed and talked to these volunteers and realized how non-permanent this structure could be, it could basically be jacked up and put onto a couple of furniture rollers and slid across the parking lot. It just baffled me that we didn't go that extra step or work harder and faster to find a solution. I was just very, very disappointed. And so I asked them, why have you never come forward? If this thing's been in the works for almost a year, why haven't you spoken to council? And they said, well, we don't dare, and I'm paraphrasing this, but we don't want to ruffle City Hall's feathers because it'll just get sidetracked or put on the back burner. And that infuriated me more. So Mr. Cool, I know you're on this call, Mayor, you're on this call, Administrator Oborn, you're on this call. That's a culture we've been working to change for some time. And I know that it's easy to throw staff under the bus. If the public is mad at something, it's easy to go out there and do that. But when you hear that assumed culture, it's just incredibly disappointing that they don't want to go back and even, I guess, push a little bit at City Hall to try and find a creative solution because they're worried that their project would be sidelined. It was just incredibly frustrating. So when Mayor Pro Tem asks about the financial repercussions of what they've had to go through, I'd like to be very specific. Dr. Scooby in his letter says that they pay for 3 sheds at $420 a month. At a minimum, 1 or 2 of those sheds that fee should be waived. And if it takes a motion from council to do that, I'm happy to do that. This is nothing that they did wrong. They've actively worked in good faith. We've had city officials down there on site inspecting it and given them a thumbs up and their assurances that this can be done. So I would just like to make sure that they're taken care of, that they're made whole, and that we continue to work and evolve our culture. Mayor, you talk about working together, customer service, getting the yes. I would like to see some extra effort put into that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Servadius. We have, Councilor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real briefly, following up on Mayor Pro Tem's comment, and I had my statement as well as Councilmember Servadius. Yeah, I'm pretty disappointed on dropping the ball. I wasn't privy to some of that early on. However, I can definitely support some compensation for the youth selling. Materials were on the ground when they were given the okay, and so it's just not a good picture. I think we need to make ourselves look better, and so some type of compensation in their rent to make up for the inconvenience, I could definitely support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mack. I think that we have had some discussion about that already, and I think we agree here, certainly. So,
City attorney, currently.
do we have another, what?
Currently.
Oh, Grant. Mr. Weed, are you here?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just one thought concerning the issue would be that the city does have a process set up where any applicant or any citizen or individual who may feel or believe that they have a financial loss as a result of city actions can file a claim identifying what their loss is, and there's a process already in place to adjust that claim in due course. So one thing that we would probably want to suggest is getting a claim form so that the sailing club can, if they choose, process that through the city, and then we'll take a look at what the issues are and process it through the normal course like we would any other claim for loss.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weed. Any other input or questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move on then at this time to our next item. Oh, somebody, nope, guess not. Fire Department, Resolution 20-24, Island County Multi-Jurisdiction Hazard Mitigation Plan. Chief Merrill?
Thanks, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. As you know, I've talked about this in the past. As far as the Island County Hazard Mitigation Plan, we did our 5-year update. I've worked with Island County DEM and their consultant and the rest of the other partners within the county. We have upgraded our resolution and the plan itself. We need to have the council adopt this resolution so that it can go to FEMA, so that if we have to go in for funding for disaster or disaster mitigation, this is a preliminary requirement to have this in place. You can anticipate to see this on the consent agenda October 6th, and I'll take any questions if you have any. How's that for brief?
That's brief. Thanks, Chief. Any questions, input? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number B, self-contained breathing apparatus.
So as you know, from discussions previously, our self-contained breathing apparatus have come up to the end of their 15-year life cycle. Sandra Place is going to talk about a little bit more in depth when she talks about some replacements. Our SCBs are due to be replaced this year. I will let Sandra take it when she gets to her time. We are still waiting to see if we're going to get a FEMA grant. So far, we have not seen the grant come through. There's still another 5 or 6 days of awards coming out. But at this time, I'm going to defer the rest of the conversation on SCBA's to Sandra Place under Public Works.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So I see, Sandra, you're on under Public Works, and we'll take it up at that time, right? Okay. Any council input or questions about the self-contained breathing apparatus? Okay. Then we'll move on to our next section, Public Works. A, clean water facility purchases. And with that, we have our Public Works Director, Kathy Rosen.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Brett Arvidsson is going to make this presentation. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. Lisa, would you put my slides up, please? And by the way, I have 2 different presentations to present today. Okay. Okay, my first presentation is adding membrane capacity to avoid future sewer overflows. Can you turn the page, please? As you know, we experienced an overflow last February on the 5th, 6th, and 7th, where we had to bypass the clean water facility. It was about 1 million gallons. Our plant design was based on the DOE standards. We call it the Orange Book, and it was approved by DOE. This methodology uses existing sewer systems, extrapolates known flows. Could you turn the page, please? Our overflow resulted from flows way beyond our experience or even expectations. It's a phenomenon we call ionized infiltration and inflow. What happened was an unusually wet January was followed by what we call a pineapple express, or meteorologists call it atmospheric river, which created an abnormal amount of rainfall, a huge amount of rainfall actually, and we had extremely high groundwater conditions. And I did present a more detailed description of the event at February. Can you turn the slide, please, last February. Talking about lessons learned, the amount of infiltration was much higher than our previous history or ability to estimate. We'd never seen anything like this before. It actually, if you remember my presentation, it went on for actually 4 or 5 days after the rain had stopped. We do feel the worst, recent event was probably the example of the worst case event. And while there's always some potential for it to happen again in the future, I don't think it'll get any worse. And based on this worst case experience, we can upgrade our peak flow capacity with additions to our membranes. And also, as we go forward with any further discussions with the Navy, I&I limitations will be a major concern. Next slide, please. So anyway, we did analyze the peak flows. We took our much harder look at it, and we initiated, with Corol's help, conversations with Suez, which is our membrane manufacturer. Our existing membrane trains have space for additional modules. So we have 4 trains right now, and we can add modules onto the existing system. And also, Suez has newer versions of the modules which have a greater capacity. Next slide, please. In addition to adding the modules and the piping, of course, we would have to also upgrade our scour blowers, which are the large boxes in there with larger motors. We can use existing blowers, but we just need more horsepower. Suez did provide a proposal for upgrading our facility by 1,000 gallons per minute, which will maximize the capacity of our existing system. We do have extra bays in there, but just maximize our existing mechanical capacity. And that cost was $553,000. Additionally, Suez provided a two-phased implementation approach for purchasing about 500 gallons per minute, plus minus, at $312,000, and the second 500 gallons per minute at $334 for a total of $646. So we could do it in several stages. But that's an option also. Additionally, to implement this, because we have the bigger horsepower, we're going to have to do some electrical and control modifications, upgrade the wiring and the starters for the blowers, and do some SCADA control modifications. We estimate that at about $50,000. Operations staff would install the mechanical equipment as something, like I say, it's just an extension of our existing equipment. The next slide, please. So moving forward, staff recommends moving forward with the complete installation. It's less expensive overall and provides the highest level of reliability. And this installation also not only provides us extra peak flow capacity, but also provides us extra growth capacity. We can handle more houses with this also, residential units or whatever. So we could actually use systems development fees for this purpose. Use of system development fees would not impact our rates, so that would be good news. So when staff intends to bring this proposal forward at the October 6th council meeting, we do have a firm proposal. It would be sole source, but like I say, they already are our existing vendor. Anyway, any questions?
Councilor Servadius.
Mr. Arvidsson, can you back up one slide?
Lisa?
So if the addition, which I in concept support, adds extra growth capacity, but also peak flow capacity, what's the metric there? How much what do we really need as far as peak flow?
Right now,
we do both. In theory, you can, but if we have one of those events,
we think 1,000 gallons per minute is going to take care of any future event. We feel it's got plenty of conservative to us. And looking back at the February event, which I think is about as bad as it's ever going to get, if we'd had another 400 or 500 gallons per minute, we would have gotten it through because we could have kept it down. So we kind of feel that 600 gallons per minute would have been the number, but we can get the 1,000 gallons per minute and have a lot more reliability. So that's it's within this, it's just buying the module size. So
that helps me. Let me ask this a different way. What if we grew by 20%? What are we averaging right now as far as gallons per minute?
It's more complex than that because you start talking, when we look at the peak flow, that's a question of how leaky our sewer system is. When we start talking about capacity, we start looking at our dry weather flows, and our peak flow right now is running about 1,000 gallons per minute. So we would go from about 4,700, we actually got 5,200 at one point through it. So we'll be up around 6,000 gallons per minute. And our peak flow in the dry season is probably in the 1,500, 2,000 range.
So we're buying this system, or we're improving the system for the wet months. So let's say November to March, the wetter months, November to April.
Yeah.
So if we were to look at our average daily usage during that same time, we grow our community by 20%, which means we'd probably grow our sewage processing by 20%. I'm just curious how much overhead is then left for a peak flow event.
If we grow our wintertime flow, which is higher than our dry, does not, if we add 20% capacity, we don't necessarily add 20% to the peak flow, because we have that I&I component, and that's a function of pipe age and pipe condition. And new sewers, when we add them, are much better materials and they just don't leak. So you're not going to see a linear growth in wet weather flow with 20% growth, you know. And so, but you can.
So yes, that makes sense. So if we assume that everyone's toilets work the same, and I, if we increase the dry months then by 20%, and we incur whatever normal I&I we have, inflow and infiltration for our newest council member, then I just want to make sure that, I'm just curious how much overhead we really have there.
We have, I mean, I don't use the word overhead. To me, as I look at it, right now, with the new system, we're going to have the ability to basically handle the worst case event. And when you talk I&I, we were, you know, the amount of sewage flow was there. We were just handling leakage. So the max, like I say, the worst case leakage is what we call our peak flow. And I'm pretty sure if we'd had another 500 gallons per minute, we would have gotten it through. We were just that close. But so this, to me, the 1,000 gallons per minute, it makes me sleep better at night.
All right, so none of my peers may care, but being a bit of a data freak, would you please present some of those numbers at the October 6th meeting? Just here's what our averages are. This is how much more capacity, or overhead is the word I use, capacity this gives us. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Brett.
You're welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I remember, Mr. Arvidson, you sending out some videos of parts of that event, what helped cause the extra flow, and it was pipes leading down to, part of it was the pipes leading down to the plant through the stormwater and different things. And the pipes are so old, you could see the rain coming through those pipes from on top of them, from the ground, from the soil. So we've adding the capacity, but doesn't there need to be a plan to start replacing those pipes? I mean, they're either going to burst, you know, we may be able to accept the flow, but if that rain is coming through the soil and being absorbed and going into those pipes to add that extra water, if I remember looking at those pictures, do we have a plan for that?
Well, there's two issues with it. You know, the pictures I showed were actually mainline sewers, and we have projects on the capital list to start replacing it. A lot of our problem actually came from the southeast part of town, actually, where I live. And but also the biggest issue is that between the main line and the house is called lateral. And the laterals are privately owned, and that's probably the worst offender of this issue is the laterals. So we'd have to go back and make people start replacing those, and that could be a problem. So for us, and also if you go back to each house and start trying to repair laterals, that's a multi-year process.
Okay.
And so, but also in the same token, you're right, we need to continue to improve our system, and getting at the main lines, we're looking at 3 projects next year to 3 areas next year to do what we call pipe bursting and actually replace the mains.
Okay, I'll follow on, Mr. Arvidson. So the laterals are privately owned, but I believe there were, I do not know how many, several homes that flooded because that lateral failed. If we know which ones aren't good, or systematically, if the city could do the work and maybe that would be a cost savings instead of each person hiring their own plumber or whoever to do it. Isn't that a preventative measure for the homeowner as well as the city not being blamed? I mean, isn't there some proactivity here, education and knowing where those pipes were and the laterals that connect to that main pipe? It just seems like there should be a compromise or a win-win with the city saying, hey, did you know this? And this is what happened. And that lateral basically estimation is city could do the work, blah, 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 and see how many. So then you have a group. That's, I don't know, that's just a comment that sometimes we just tell them after the problem has already happened. If we know it's there from past things, we're straightening up our equipment. Wouldn't it be helpful? And, you know, some people aren't, they're going to blow us off. But I think quite a few would be very appreciative that the city said, you know, we studied and we figured this out. If you would like, give us your name and we'll put you on the list. And, you know, and I don't know if the city's allowed to do that work or not. I know they do the hookup. If you're going from septic to sewer, they would be the ones to do it. So that's a question. Also, in buying these, which I think would be necessary, but that's, if you divide it up, that's $93,000 more. Is it better to somehow be able to short-term loan, interdepartment loan or something to pay off the whole thing than to have to divide it up? You're going to have to pay for both hearts, but $93,000 is a lot of money in my book, and it could go in a lot of ways for things. So those are my two questions.
Our recommendation is to do the sole purchase. I put it out there if we have to do it in two phases there, but our recommendation is go with the buy them all at one time and install them at one time. And plus, like I say, it is coming from system development fees, so it doesn't impact rates.
So Brad,
System development fees can only be used for growth related projects to add capacity, and we have the funding for that in system development fees. With regards to the homes that flooded, there were, I believe, maybe 3. They're on Ely Street. We have a belly in that main line there. That is one of the projects that Brett talked about, that's on our capital list to fix. So that issue would be resolved, and really if the property owners have a check valve that doesn't allow water to come back up through the lateral from the main line, because at that location our main line surcharged, and we actually had sewage coming up out of the manholes and then backflowing into the homes in through their sewer system. So if they had a check valve that wouldn't allow that backflow into their house, and if we take care of the belly in that line, then we should be okay. So those are the two issues. Oh, I can't. You're muted, Councilmember Munns. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Ms. Rosen, wouldn't we still want to let homeowners know, hey, we discovered that some people don't have the check valve working or don't have it. You may want to, I mean, I just think any little bit of being proactive to prevent things, if we know this happened and we figured out there's quite a few, I mean, all it takes is one to get flooded and then, you know, we've got a bad rap. But if we know it had to do with this check valve, then, you know, put it in their bill or something and say, hey, we figured out from blah, blah, blah. You may want to check to see if you have this. It shouldn't be expensive or something. I mean, I don't know. We find out information and then it sits with us. And I just feel like there should be something we could help educate and say, hey, we're into customer service and to helping. We're not going to give stuff away, but I mean, you know what I mean? And it just goes a long way for relationships between the city that sometimes is listed as the bad guys and the homeowners. So I'm just throwing it out as an idea, please.
Thank you. So staff was in contact with those property owners when that occurred. They met with them. The fire department was there as well, assisting them. So there has been that communication with them at the time of the occurrence. And if we take care of our capital project, that will go a long way.
Okay, I appreciate that, but any other work being done, or just a reminder, hey, if you didn't do this last time, or if you're near this area, you may want to be sure you have a good working check valve, just because. Thanks.
If I could add real briefly too, on that check valve issue, typically when you have an issue like the sewer backing into the house that's in a basement condition, and in my experience, they make the insurance claim, the claim is paid off, but with the caveat that they are required at that point in time to put in that backflow device. And then there is no more future claims. And that's typically how that's handled. And so those houses, if these 3 houses installed those at this point in time, they got paid their claim, then they shouldn't be a problem going forward. As for your other point about the private laterals, so when we TV our sewer, do a TV inspection, the only thing we see is the main line and the connection of that lateral to the main line. Now, there are times when we do see that there's a failure at that connection point, and we require the homeowner to take corrective action to fix that. But we do not see up their lateral from the main to the house. And so, they may, it's a good indication their line is completely failed because there's a crack at the main line and they're going to fix it. But if we're not seeing cracks at the main line, we have no idea of the condition of the rest of the main line. So an investigative process would be cost prohibitive, time consuming, years to accomplish. So that's what I wanted to add on lateral investigation.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges.
So we've got Chief Merrill. I see you've got your hand up, Chief?
Yeah, if anybody has not seen it, I've got a video of that manhole as the water's pouring out of it at the top of Ely, prior to where these laterals and where the 3 houses are that Miss Rosen was speaking of, and where the belly is in the pipe. And I've got the video of that shows how much water was coming out the night that we were having the flooding problem, if you'd care to see it.
So thanks for your patience, Councilor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple questions here. One of them be for Brent. Brent, when you mentioned the staff would be installing this equipment, for those kind of dollar amounts, does that jeopardize any type of warranty on this equipment if we install it versus the manufacturer?
No, it doesn't. Matter of fact, we deal directly with Suez on a routine basis. So it's basically the system was designed to, if you look at the end of it, there's end caps or adding new pipes to it. So it's designed to just pull the end caps off and start bolting new pipes on. So they don't care who installs it. And they actually, a part of their proposal is they're going to have somebody out here supervising the installation. And so they will have their own people on site to ensure that it's done properly.
Any estimate on the life expectancy of these membranes? I know, give or take.
Actually, that's another advantage of these additional membranes that I didn't discuss, but they do add more capacity. But our membranes are a function of how hard we use them. So right now, our estimate is 6 to 8 years before we have to replace them. That's the membrane capacity. Adding more membranes puts less load on them, so it extends the life. I can't say if it's a year, 2 years. We won't know until we have some operational history. But another advantage of this is it helps push out that replacement date.
Okay, thank you. And I could be wrong here, but I thought this plant was built oversized that we could handle anything down the road with a small amount of growth or something. But it sounds like we didn't overbuild this facility.
We built it to the standards in our facilities plan. We tried to make it as conservative as possible. Like I say, we had no history here, there, And if it hadn't been for, for a peak flow event, we probably would not be too worried. But unfortunately, we found the weak point, and a lot of it has to do with our climate here. Is we don't get these kind of rains very often, but when we get them hard, and we were just in the middle of the bullseye at the time. So
we did build it to allow for additional membrane cassettes to go in the future for future capacity, right? There are other areas within the plant where we would put additional membranes as growth occurs.
Yes, and that's, I can say that's.
So the structure is there. We just, as growth occurs, we need to buy more membranes.
Okay. Last situation, following up on Mayor Pro Tem here, with the new membranes. It sounds like they're needed, and I can support it, but only upon that we need to start taking a look at these other arteries and look at this infrastructure, whether it's 24 months down the road, whether it's 36, whether it's 48 months, we need to start looking at arteries. If we cannot only just throw all the money at the facility, we've got to figure out, do we need new sleeves? What are these laterals? So I don't want to spend this kind of money on a brand new facility, but it sounds like it's needed for two different things, overflow and for additional housing growth. But let's start looking out. Public Works need to look out in the future. What do we got? What do we need to do on the older part of the community and things like that? Thank you.
So, Councilor Goebel, did you have your hand up?
Are there any further questions?
Any further questions? I'd like to welcome Councilor Wiesner, and I see you have your hand up.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I guess I'd like to provide a little input on something I think we could possibly do to help deal with the infiltration issue. As a real estate broker, I'm responsible for, seeing a lot of the houses in the older part of our community exchange hands, right? And I don't know that the brokers in the community totally understand the issues we have with some of the old clay and cast iron drain pipes that were installed 60, 70 years ago in the older section of town. When us realtors perform an inspection on a home, there's a standard addendum that goes with that purchase that protects the buyer, and that's a home inspection contingency. And part of that contingency allows us to check a box or not check a box, where we include as part of our inspection contingency a sewer drain scope. I mean, it's actually a separate line item within the contingency, and there's a box we can either check we will be allowed to or will not be allowed to perform that service. Now, in fact, 99% of all buyers do not perform that. It's a $300 charge from a plumbing company, typically, to come out, put the camera down, and create the video disc of that run. But I think with a lot of education, we could turn that around. I think educating the realtors is going to be the key. And as these houses exchange hands in the eastern part of our city, if realtors understand that there are a problem there, and that is something that should be included in the standard inspection contingency, it'll take us a long way to discovering those connections that are failing, and they'll typically then get taken care of during that inspection contingency period. It's going to protect the buyer. The buyer then, of course, puts it upon the seller. The seller then has to go in and perform those repairs before the house exchanges hands. But right now, that is not a norm in the community, nor do I think anybody in the real estate community thinks it should be the norm.
That's good input. Thank you, Councilor Wiesner. Any other input or questions about this subject? Clean water.
Mr. Mayor, if I could follow up briefly with Mr. Wiesner's comments. When we have an opportunity, when a permit comes into Public Works, for a remodel addition, and we have some review oversight of it. When it's appropriate. So, and that is through the normal permit process when there's a remodel or a new home going on a house that may have an old existing stub. So we do look at those things.
Okay. Okay, so you have another item, Mr. Arvidsson?
Yes, I do. Lisa, would you put my second presentation up, please? Lisa?
She's working on it.
Okay. Okay, I'm here to talk about Biosol's odor control. We've discussed it in the past. Lisa, will you give my first slide, please? As background, of course, our clean water facility went in operation, the Biosol is a part of this clean water, went in operation in September of 2019. It's been a year now. Even before that, since we started it up, we've experienced varying levels of odor emissions since then. There are a lot of reasons for this, and at the time, we had a poor handle on it, but also the solutions were potentially very expensive. Turn the slide, please. The causes of odors are complex. There's a lot of sources from it. I call it, it's like the old adage of peeling the onion as you take all the layers down. You get down, there's nothing left, but you cry all the way. Also, our relationship with Harslev impacted the operation. Some of the sources were operationally from operational practices, and we had a stiff learning curve, and we didn't have Harslev support in that learning curve. So there's a lot of things we had to deal with, and we had to learn ourselves. So we also had some mechanical ventilation issues that contributed to the problem. Getting to the bottom of these issues would substantially reduce the cost of odor control. We initially estimated that at $750,000, and we felt that trying to get to the bottom of the issues was a more cost-effective way to approach the problem. Next slide, please. So anyway, we learned the system. A lot of it revolved around handling the solids. The temperature of the unit was critical to us. Also, how we handle the ventilation, the various fan systems. It is a very complex fan system in the building, and we kind of got that. And we actually gradually reduced the odor emissions. After we got the temperature control, it was pretty drastic. We've had continuing success there, but we still have some odors. While further operational reductions are possible, and we'll still keep pursuing them, we feel additional investment in odor control equipment right now is still justified, and it's also becoming a lot more cost effective. Next slide, please. So anyway, recently this year, after achieving what we feel is pretty good odor reduction, and we've made some modifications, we did some detailed testing to determine the type and amounts of the compounds remaining. The types, we want to make sure we got some media. It didn't have something in there that our media wouldn't remove, or we got the right media for it. Else the amount of the compound is there. We did that testing, and the concentrations we're talking about is in the parts per billion and parts per quadrillion. Our noses are very sensitive, but in reality, there's not much stuff there, but our noses are just real sensitive. But based on that information, we were able to select a suitable media and a container system to remove the odorous compounds. Next slide, please. We did obtain bids for the odor control devices. Our low bidder submitted a bid for $51,000. That's for the equipment. We want to install it, see how it works. We may add some additional fan capacity to give it some more air boost in it, get more pressure loss. That would cost approximately $50,000 more, but we'd like to try it first and see how it works. Staff would install the equipment again, and we do have funds available in the current wastewater budget. However, we may have, depending on the schedule, we may have a budget carryover. Next slide, please. And so our next steps right now is, we just got the bids last Friday. We're continuing to review them, excuse me. We intend to bring a recommendation award to the October 6th council meeting. Upon council approval, we'll purchase and install the system. Questions?
Okay, take it to council, Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. And Brett, thank you for bringing this forward. I know we've been hounding on you for a while, and I'm going to ask some really hard questions now, and understand the reason I'm going to ask the hard questions is I'm a firm believer in understanding that in order to move forward, we kind of got to look at the past a little bit, right? And you know, I want to make sure I totally understand this whole scenario and how we ended up in this discussion. So we've got a gigantic facility over there that's got some scrapers and the ultraviolet lights and the pipes and all the stuff that there's areas where the sewage is exposed, and we put in a gigantic carbon filter vacuum system on that entire building, so all the air gets circulated out of that building, goes through the carbon filters before out in the air, and you know, we spent a lot of money. In fact, you know, we had to, you know, tear down a building literally to get those facilities into place to make sure that we did not put a smelly treatment plant back at the beach, because that was the #1 thing we heard from our citizens. And then I understand when we opened, we had some fairly odoriferous odors, and I know that it's declined, and I appreciate you and staff's diligent work on doing that. But what I understand is, of course, is we've got the dryer located in a separate building, and that's where we're taking the sewage after it's been centrifuged and dried as much as it can, and we're taking it into that dryer and we're heating that up, and we've got fans venting out of that dryer room, and it appears that's where these odors are coming from. And so I guess the ultimate question I just got to ask is, why didn't we think back then that a room that we were drying this stuff in was going to create any odor? I know, tough question. I appreciate you thinking about it.
Brett, you got to unmute.
You got to unmute.
Sorry. No, it's a good question, and we went at, you know, the system we have, the odor control system we have, and we went at it with every intention. It has a lot to do with codes and how you design these things. The air exchanges, the odor control system we have was fairly expensive, and it's a function of how much air we put through the system. So our goal was to, you know, keep the odor control equipment inexpensive, is to isolate the odors from the various process units the best we can, and just ventilate the building, you know, get the odors out of the building and ventilate them. When we got involved with the dryer, one, we couldn't get the dryer as sealed as we can, and we just had a lot more dust left over from that. So our intention was to have a completely separated, and that was our theory. The practical reality of it was it didn't turn out as well as we'd hoped. Some of that was, looking back, you should have said, yeah, we'd done that. Some of it was cost, because if we'd gone at it, to me it was, we could have made this decision at the early part of the process and saved some headache. There was an intention, we thought it would work, and we were trying to save the city money. It didn't quite work out as well we did. Some of it was complicated by the vendor that we selected, and some of the design process we had with Harslev, and we've discussed our Harslev issues in the past. So, looking back, I would say, if I were doing this again, these carbon units would have been there from the start. They weren't. But also, I do feel our heart was we thought we could make it work with what we did, and we thought we had a good chance at it. It didn't quite work out as well as possible. We also came up with a cost-effective solution to make it work long-term. So I don't know, hindsight's 2020, and this has been a long process, and I guess none of us are perfect. Sorry.
No, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that answer to a very difficult question, Brad. I really do, and certainly we're not looking for perfection. I hope you get the reason I answered the questions. Number one, I want to make sure that I understand everything, and number two, I am a firm believer that this is how we learn, right? And obviously, and sometimes the council is even guilty of this in our zest to save a buck, right? We do something and it turns out we didn't save money, and in the long run we ended up costing money, right? And certainly I'm sure the retrofit, at least now we have the ability to size the retrofit appropriately for the problem rather than oversize it. But at the same time, doing something after the fact often is a bigger pain and a little bit bigger cost. So again, I just wanted to reflect back, made sure I understood, and I certainly appreciate that answer. And more importantly, I appreciate the fact that we're following the commitment that we made and you guys all made, everybody involved with this project made. We all stood up there and said, there will be no odor, right? And it was a commitment we made to our community. And I know you guys have worked hard at this, and I appreciate those efforts because it's important. This is an important commitment that we fulfill for sure. So I'm glad at least there's a solution, right? Because I guess if I want to look at the glass half empty here, it could be that there would be no solution, and it'd be something we'd have to live with. So I appreciate you seeing that through, and again, I appreciate the answer to my difficult question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you, Brent, for all your efforts put forward. And unfortunately, this material does stink, and there's not a lot that a lot of people can do about it. So with that being said, if we do this approximately $100,000 investment, in your opinion, is it going to remedy the situation once and for all?
Yes, it will.
Okay, because that's what my constituents are asking me. When are we going to get rid of this? And I says, well, we're working on it as hard as we can. Again, thank you, and that's it.
Okay, anyone else? Any other questions or input? Okay, thank you, Brett. We will then move on to item number B under Public Works, vehicle replacements, vehicle replacements. Sandra, I think I heard your name for this one. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. Lisa, may I start sharing my screen? All right, can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay, so today we get to talk about the 2020 vehicle and equipment replacements. And as some of you know, this is near and dear to my heart. I really love talking about the vehicles because this is where I started at the city. A little background on the equipment rental program. This is the municipal fleets provide a variety of services to the city and residents. In many cases, these services are provided on wheels. The ability to provide the services in an effective and efficient manner is partly dependent on a fleet of vehicles and other equipment. And this is definitely a team effort. It starts with mechanics and operators and department heads, and it goes to city admin and mayor and ultimately city council. So it's definitely a teamwork throughout the whole city. We have a mission in the Equipment Rental Replacement Fund that we are going to provide safe, efficient, and economical fleet replacements and effective and economical technology services. Individual departments contribute towards future purchases, and that's where this fund is going to come into play. And over time, we have the adequate cash to be able to fully fund these assets with no short-term borrowing. The equipment rental fund is established by an RCW and it's also in our code. So that's just a slide about that. Replacements are approved by City Council during the biannual budget process. You'll be seeing the next one come up here real soon. We give you a detailed list of vehicles and anticipated replacement costs provided. OHMC requires formal bids for anything over $30,000, and all of these that we'll talk about today will require council approval, and we hope to bring them to you on October 6th. This is just an example of the 2019-2020 list that we provided to City Council, where you'll see that this is where the replacements come into play. I wanted to put these slides in here because we wanted to thank City Council for the support of the replacement fund. These are some of the big replacements we have completed this year. That rotary lift is used in the mechanic shop. And it was a huge undertaking because we had to be down for a while to be able to get the old one out and put the new one in. That Mitsubishi Outlander, that one is our first electric slash vehicle. It's called a electric hybrid, but it's not the hybrid. It starts with electric, then it goes to gas. It's not going back and forth between like the rest of our hybrids. We have 2 refuse trucks. We've received one of them. The other one is still not here until approximately November. And of course, that's due to COVID-19. The roll-off truck has been received and it's in service right now. We just received the mower. That was the last one, the last replacement we did. And that's also in service. As you can see, the grass all on the bottom of the mower. And our fire command truck for the fire department. So those are some of the fun replacements we did this year. One of the most difficult issues concerning the municipality fleets is determining the ideal time to replace the vehicles. And I know some of you have heard this before. We do initial life cycle based on an APWA, planned fleet replacement. We do not replace the vehicle simply because we have the funds. There's a rhyme and a reason behind it. We do a detailed analysis before we recommend replacing, and we do an annual review of O&M costs versus replacement costs. We do up a worksheet. We talk about changing of needs. Is there changing of job duties? Is there changing of staffing levels that needs to change, affect the change? Do we need additional vehicles or any backup vehicles? How will they affect the service level? Those are some of the items that we talk about. What do we do when we repurchase? We look at current and future needs. We look at what's available on the market. Are there special features required? Could a smaller, more economical vehicle be used? Would a vehicle equipment from a more centralized, like a motor pool, and one of the vehicles we're talking about today is out of the motor pool that's shared among all the divisions instead of having one for each division? And would a multi-use vehicle be a good fit? And that's when we talk about the swap loaders and how we can interchange the bodies, but only have so many chassis. And then in 2018, we were thrown in with an EV option that we have to look at on every replacement. So local governments are encouraged to look at that and see if we can implement an electric vehicle, and if it's feasible, cost effective, and we do that for all of our replacements. Replacing the purchasing process, we look at state and federal contracts. We look at interlocal purchasing agreements. We do bids, formal bids, and we look to sole source. So the first vehicle we wanted to talk about today is our 10-yard dump truck replacement. It is a 1990 International dump truck. It is the oldest vehicle in the fleet besides the 1942 International fire truck Wally. In 2014, the city actually owned 2 dump trucks, but in 2014 is when we started talking about those 5-yard swap loaders that I just referred to and how we could actually decrease the fleet and be able to have more back ends to be able to do the jobs. And so we decreased the fleet from 2 10-yarders to down to 1 10-yarder. And that seems to still be good for us, just 1 10-yarder. It's used by all public works divisions and it resides in the motor pool funds. So the operators go down to the mechanic shop and they check it out based on their jobs. So we talked about this 10-yarder with the operators and the mechanics, and it meets the replacement criteria. It has some mechanical issues due to the age The steering box needs to be fixed, but we cannot obtain the seal kit, so our mechanics just keep patching it up, kind of just to make it work as long as we can make it work. There are operator issues. For instance, the capacity is too small. We would like to move from a 10-yarder to a 12-yarder. And a couple reasons for that is that materials are, it's a longer distance to get to some of our materials, like the sand and the gravel and the asphalt. And due to the TBD, staff anticipates putting down more asphalt, so less hauling would make it more efficient. Our current dump truck does not have a drop axle, which allows for full capacity. So even though it's a 10-yarder, it really doesn't legally hold 10 yards. So we have to be very conscious of that. And a drop axle actually saves the roads in the long run because it distributes the materials in the truck and it doesn't break up the asphalt. This is also, our current one is not also efficient for snow because all we have is the plow attachment and no sander. So when we send it out, it's not doing a dual purpose, it's just doing one versus our 5-yarders that have both. And for the safety issues, they're not life-threatening, of course, necessarily, but due to the age, there are no airbags. Back then, it didn't have them. It has no anti-lock brakes, and it's not eco-friendly. We have a budget of $200,000. The funds available in the replacement fund are $231,136 and some change. We have state contract pricing just for the truck and the chassis and the body is $188,548. We received 2 bids off the state and we're asking for the lower one. And we also received 2 bids for the body. So it's actually, we're buying the chassis and then they'll put the body on for our specifications. In addition to the 10-yarder, we started talking about the sander, the plow, and of course the hydraulics that run both of those. Our current 10-yarder does not have a sander. It's not efficient for snow removal, as I said. The current plow will not fit on the new truck, so we'll need to get a new one. And the hydraulics will be new technology and will not work with our current plows, so we are asking to replace those at the same time. And this one will be safer for operators because the sander or the plows will be able to be hooked up and unhooked. With the new technology, it's easier for the operators, less back strain, no twisting, that type of stuff. And then the sander as well, it has a technology where in case the materials get stuck, that it's an easy fix for the operators, especially when they're in the snow. So what we're proposing to do is to purchase a sander in the amount of $37,348. We're proposing to replace 2 plows and bring it down to 1 plow in the amount of $19,029. The hydraulic system to run both the sanders and the plow will be $34,608 for a total of $90,985. Unfortunately, we only have $72,245 available for the plows and the sander and the hydraulics, but we did have some savings from the chassis and the dump at about $42,000. And we do have money set aside, but not budgeted in the sanders at $6,000 and also for the plows at $22,000. So we still had a difference of $18,000 that we needed to be able to use. So we are proposing to take that out of the 510, which is the shop fund that's used by all the divisions, because this is an all division equipment, and take the rest out of our operating budget. And we will be using state contract pricing, so we do not have to do a formal bid. Is there any questions on this one so far?
Not seeing. Oh,
No?
Yes, Councilor Mack.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Okay, so thank you, Sander. Just real briefly, does that mean this winter time that if we approve everything here, City of Oak Harbor has 1 plow and 1 sander moving around our city in a time of need?
No, Councilmember Mack, we actually have 2 5-yarders that are set up fully to go out. This one would be an addition one that we could send out. The one that we currently have, the 10-yarder, would be sent out with just the plow. And then we also have a 1-ton that has a plow on the back as well, or on the front as well. What this would do is just replace the 10-yarder one, and we're not for sure that it will be done before the end of the year. And so if the snow hits in February, we might hit it for that one, but we're not for sure. Because of COVID, everything is taking a very, very long time.
Okay, thank you, I understand.
Yep.
Okay, don't see any other questions. Go ahead, Sandra.
Okay, continuing on. The next one I'm going to tag team with Chief Merrill, as he said that the SCBA's are in the replacement fund. We've set aside money each year. So I'll let the chief talk about the need, and then I'll jump into the procurement part.
So back in 2005, we were able to get a grant from FEMA to buy 32 air packs. Air packs and the bottles have a 15-year life cycle on them. If you go by the NFPA standards, you're allowed 3 life cycles, which is the cycle of the code, which is every 3 years. At the end of that 3rd year, that 3rd cycle, you can no longer upgrade the packs to the most current requirements. So as it sits right now, our packs are 3 years out of date and out of compliance with NFPA standards. Right now, we're in the 2018 compliance field. We're still waiting to see if we're going to get the FEMA grant. Don't know that we're going to. We did do a regional grant with the other departments on the island, but our packs are outdated. They are no longer able to be serviced, and they no longer meet the NFPA standards. They become a liability at the end of the 15th year, and it is time to replace them.
Okay, as I said, the funds have been set aside in the 502 fund since 2007. Ray and I talked about this, and we began putting away. Funds are budgeted at $350,000, and we need, and funds available are $364,000. As Ray just said, he talked about that FEMA grant. Either way we go, whether we get the grant or not, we have to do a formal bid because of the dollar amount. And also the chief can talk to that there's a mandatory PPE testing of the equipment.
Right. As far as the testing goes, every year we have to do both a qualitative and a quantitative testing on the apparatus, both on the people and the apparatus itself. In 2018, we spent over $9,000 just to make our packs compliant enough to get enough air through them to meet the quantitative testing of those packs. So it's obvious that they are just flat worn out. We do have to test them every year. We do send our equipment out to get it certified every year to do the test, and we bring a technician in to test the packs here. With the new packs that we're looking at, there have been some major changes in them. One of the nice things is the warranty on all the electronics. They now have a full 15-year warranty on every piece of electronics on the packs, whereas in years past, you had a 3-year warranty, and after that, you were paying the cost. The packs have become more economical to operate in the long term because of the way they are being designed and the equipment on them, but they are an expensive piece of equipment.
So we hope to go out to bid by October 1st and bring it to City Council by November 3rd. And at this time, is there any questions on the SCBA's?
Councilor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, if we end up getting that FEMA grant, can that be retroactive to cover this?
I'm thinking how to best answer your question. No. On the FEMA grant, it is strictly designed to purchase the pack up front. We can't go out and buy the pack and then retroactively pay ourselves back.
And could that the money from that FEMA grant be shifted to other things within the department, or specifically for the packs?
It is specifically to the pack.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm just going to mention, I certainly know how important these packs are. And as Chief Merrill knows, I was able to participate in a fire and wear one of those packs and barely be able to see out of the face shield of that pack before going into a fire, and much less once I was inside the fire. And obviously without the oxygen from that pack, I would have never made it out of that fire. There was absolutely positively no way that even for a second that pack could fail and be able to make it out. So certainly an integral part of the department, and I get the importance. So sure, I'd love to have seen that FEMA grant though come through, but obviously we've got to move forward with this.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, what's the timing in here? If you waited to send out bids on the 15th and then award them on the middle of November, you're still within 2020 to get them replaced. And that would give a little more time to hear from FEMA, or do you know when the drop dead date is for FEMA? That they will award, and after this point, we're out of it.
As of the last reports that we got, September 26th is the last day to award bid or to award grant.
Okay, so everybody needs to get out the rosary beads or their gargoyle or whatever and do blessings and prayers and hope it comes in before
Gargoyle?
October 1st. Whatever.
Gargoyle, really?
Everybody does different things that floats their boat, okay?
I have tried everything, Mayor Pro Tem.
Any other questions for the chief? Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Sandra, did you have more?
Oh, yes, Mayor, thank you. So the next one I'm going to tag team with Chief Dresker on, and we have a unique situation presented to us. I'll let Chief Dresker talk to the need, and then I'll explain what that unique situation is.
I guess I better unmute. Sorry about that. And just, can you hear me okay? Thumbs up?
Yes.
All right. Just to let you know, I did witness Chief Merrow do a good luck dance. I don't want to watch that again. Just, we'll get past that. So back to mine for the SUV hybrid purchase. So I had mentioned back when we were doing the jail reallocation reorganization, and we converted and added 2 additional officers, converting a jail staff position and all that, that we would likely, I'd be coming back at some point for an additional patrol car. The situation we're presented with now is an opportune time. The SUV that we're looking to get would be a 9th patrol car, and we currently have 8, we've had 8 for many, many years. It's needed to offset the additional staff and also part of our reorganization. So we formed the Special Services Division where we have a sergeant and 4 officers, and that's separate from patrol. They go out and do additional details, and they also do patrol type of activity. One thing I didn't put in here is in the summer months, and you've likely seen a lot of bike patrols out there, and that's a primary thing for us. Of course, days like today with the wind, and as we get into some colder times, likely they'll be in cars a little more. So an additional car provides for the upstaffing. It provides adequate transportation for times when more officers are working, and also mitigates increased wear on other vehicles. And we would be using existing funds to purchase this SUV, which would fill a vehicle slot that's been open since a motorcycle that we sold a couple years back. That was used. Okay.
So the unique situation that we are talking about is vehicle P7 was totaled on October 14th, 2019. It was due to be replaced in 2020. Luckily, insurance is paying for the full replacement cost. The vehicle has been received and it's actually being outfitted as we speak. So we're asking, due to this unique opportunity, we're proposing to use the funds that were originally set aside for P7 before it was totaled to purchase this new vehicle. It did not include the fleet due to one motorcycle used for patrol. Sorry, my light just went off in the office. This will be a hybrid vehicle just like the one that we're receiving. That will bring us up to 2 hybrid vehicles for the police fleet. With the addition of this new SUV, the fleet will have a contribution will be approximately $2,000. There will be an addition to with the new SUV, the fleet contributions will be approximately $2,000 lower than the 2020. So that is a good thing. It's not going to increase that amount. And the R&M cost will increase, but it will be offset by the fuel savings, because if you remember the hybrids, we're anticipating a $3,000 to $4,000 savings per hybrid a year because of the technology. Staff feels confident that this is the way to go in order to save on ongoing fleet costs and to fulfill the Department of Commerce requirement also that we have another electric vehicle type vehicle with a hybrid. This is not a budgeted item. We are asking for permission to use the funds. And as I said, we wanted to use the funds from P7, which are only $52,382 so far, because it would have 2 more years by 2020 to get to its full amount. But we happen to have some additional balance in vehicle P20, which is one of the Impalas. And we'd like to combine those two and be able to use those funds to purchase the vehicle, which will be approximately $68,000. So we'll still have a little bit more savings, about $9,000 there that will be left in the fund, and it will revolve just like everything else. This vehicle is on the state contract pricing, and the outfitting will be done by our normal vendor, Systems for Public Safety. And the new year opening right now is the new part of the year to be able to purchase. So we're hoping that we get it faster than this one that we're just now outfitting, because it's been almost exactly a year from order. Any questions on this purchase?
Okay, not.
And by the way, you mentioned 2020 a couple of times. It was actually 2022, as you saw on the right.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any questions at this point. Sandra, what's next?
Okay, we have another request, and I'll let the chief speak to this one. I'll just set him up for it. In 2018, we actually had this Chevy Impala that was already being used as a captain's car until we replaced it with an SUV because of the functionality. It wasn't big enough to hold all of the gear and to be a command unit. So at that time, we asked City Council to authorize staff to keep the Impala because we had the second captain at the time, and City Council authorized that. And now we're asking, and then in 2019, we actually replaced it again with another SUV. So both captains were put on the same command platform. But now the chief is asking to keep it on the fleet, continue to keep it on the fleet for volunteers and for a travel vehicle. And Chief Dresker, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, so the Impala still has a useful life for the purpose that we would intend it to be used for, which is volunteers and travel. It's still usable in that respect. We would still maintain a little bit in a replacement fund, so at some point in the future we could ideally replace that, probably with the used vehicle that's still functional. It's not on patrol for normal patrol use, and so the wear and tear and those types of needs are different. And of course, it's not going to be used for an administrative command vehicle, which is why we got the SUVs. And actually, with the budget that Sandra's worked out, it still puts us at $2,000 less a year in our fleet replacement. So our fleet replacement, and Sandra, you can correct me if I'm wrong, going into next year is 108,000 contribution from the city or from OHPD. This year it was 110. So we're still reducing our need to contribute to fleet replacement. And some of that comes about because of vehicles, like I think we had a van we were supposed to replace this year. We looked at that and said, we don't need to replace that this year. It's got useful life left in it for what its purpose is. So it would just allow us to have this SUV instead of selling it, still using it within our department for those, I don't want to say administrative purposes, but additional purposes outside of a patrol vehicle.
Any questions?
I think that's it. Do you have another slide, Sandra, or is that it?
No, that's it, Chief. Any questions on this one?
I'm not seeing any. Any questions? Nope. Okay.
Okay.
Sandra?
Thank you. Yep, we have 2 more to go. So our next one is our refuse trucks. These are also actually residential trucks. And we were looking ahead. And if you remember back in 2019, we asked for this exact same thing, is to order now because it's going to take a year or more to get here. And that's the case with these as well. So we would like to replace 2 of our 2015 Peterbilt Wayne sidearm loader trucks, which are used for residential. We are proposing to replace them with 2 2021 Peterbilt Labrie sidearm loaders, which are identical to the 2 that we're receiving right now. The normal turnaround time is typically 10 months, but with COVID, we're going over a year or more. Proposing to order now for delivery next year, and they meet the replacement criteria. This is the 2021, 2022 that we're proposing to City Council this budget cycle. So I just wanted to show you that it's actually in there. Both trucks have control panel issues. It's a manufacturer defect. The controls are actually no longer, the manufacturer is no longer in business, therefore it's harder to get the parts. We've already replaced one control in the amount of $11,000, and the other one we put on hold, even though it needs to be done, with bearing the decision today. Also, the floors are poorly made. We've already replaced them twice. We're ready to do a third time, and typically you only replace the floor of a refuse truck one time in its life cycle. The Wayne body is the issue, it's not the chassis. And we've talked with other cities like Mount Vernon and City of Tacoma. Everybody is having the same issue with these Wayne bodies. Reliability is essential for us because unlike the City of Tacoma, who has a huge fleet and backup vehicles, we can't afford downtime because we don't have that. We only have one backup and due to our small fleet, and these are used daily, Monday through Friday. We have a budgeted amount of $700,000. We have funds available in the amount of $700,024. The total needed is $670,287, which would give us a savings left in the account of $29,712. We're proposing to utilize a Sourcewell bid just like the last two trucks, so that will take care of the formal bidding. And it will also keep our fleet standardized for our operators and our mechanics, and that will make us more efficient. Any questions on that one?
Okay, I'm not seeing any at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, moving on. This is our last one. These are also the last purchase replacements for 2020's budget, the 2019-20 budget. This one is for camera equipment that's inside the camera van. So the camera van itself is perfectly fine, but the technology inside needs to be changed out. So this one is used by the Wastewater Collections Division, and they inspect and maintain city sewers and storm drain lines. In addition, it is used to inspect new developments, troubleshoot issues and complaints that we get in, to determine future replacement of city infrastructure, and it also helps to reduce water line infiltration in order to reduce water flows. This equipment inside the city's 2006 Chevrolet van, it's in great, like I said, it's in great condition, but only the vehicle or the inside needs to be replaced. And that was the idea with this vehicle, is we knew that that was going to happen, and so we saved for it. The last time this equipment was upgraded was in 2016, and that was a software upgrade. This one will be mainly for the hardware from that picture that I just showed you. The current hardware is, of course, outdated. Its support is about to expire, and new technology is available to make us more efficient. We have budgeted $75,000 for this replacement. Funds available for the total of the camera van and the equipment is $207,101. We need a total of $108,134 to make this replacement happen. Unfortunately, we did our best guess, but it came in a little short. And so staff is proposing to use the sole source procurement purchasing tool that allows the city to waive the formal bid requirements when the purchase is clearly and legitimately limited to a single source or supply. And how that pertains to this is that the software is Q software, therefore the hardware needs to be Q software as well. If we choose to go to a different manufacturer or vendor, then we would be replacing software and hardware, and that would cost us even more. Any questions on that one?
Not seeing any.
Great, thank you for your time. I know it was a lot of information. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sandra. Lots to do there, yes. Okay, we'll move on to item number C under Public Works, Navy PFAS, PFOS water system presentation. And I think for that we've got our city engineer Jim Bridges or Development Services Director Kathy Rosen.
Oh, it's me. So I'm going to share my screen here. So we've been working with the Navy for approximately the last 2 years on this project to install a new water line down Easy Street, which is where you see the A, B, C, D, and E, and to hook these homes up to city water because of the PFAS contamination that is in their wells. And likewise, this mobile home court up here will also be connected to the city water. And so we met with the Navy briefly on a kickoff meeting last month. They presented their plan, which was slightly different than the plan you see on the screen here. This plan was developed in January, I believe, of 2019. And now the Navy wants to come back and they want to eliminate this run of pipe from the Easy Street down to Coochie Street to tie in the existing water main. And we have come back and said, no, that loop needs to be connected. So the only other issue that's outstanding on this project is the connection of this house to the system. And that is the home owned by, trying to think of the name, I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, so that person has refused to work with the Navy and have his well tested. In our conversations with the Navy last month, even the local neighbors tried to contact that homeowner and tried to get him to connect. So, but they're still refusing to connect. So we are going to work with the Navy to pay for a stub out to that property. And so eventually this house could be connected and we wouldn't have to dig up the road again. So that's where we're at. That's the plan that the Navy is running with. They're still mulling over the condition of connecting these two lines. The connection of these two lines, what it does is it saves us maintenance cost, because if I have two dead ends with this close together, I have to service those lines separately. Connecting them, I no longer have the service of the blow-offs of flushing the lines, and it increases my fire flow through that area as well. So that's where we're at. I will stand for any questions.
Okay, not seeing any at this point. Did a great job, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will then go to our section for engineering, starting with 2021 TBD street overlay and arterials projects update. Jim Bridges.
Okay, that's me again here. I'm ready to share my screen again. So, in working with the county, and as we mentioned previously this spring and summer, the county wants us to bring forth a plan for them in October of this year. They were gracious enough to let us come in late in the year, basically in February of this year, to add on to their program. And so this is what we want to present for our 2021 program. The red lines are overlay and the blue lines are chip seal. As you can see, the overlay is 1.9 miles approximately, and chip seal is about 2.8 miles of roadway. In real numbers, we are doing about 1.5 times or 150% more chip seal next year, our proposal, and 350% more paving next year in our proposal. So what that means in terms of budget, of course, we don't have a good year of financial data on what we're getting yet, but in talking with finance, we're running about between $75,000 and $82,000 to $84,000 a month. 75 was the first month we collected, and we've been in that 80, 84 range for the last couple months, which is approximately at $83,000 a month. That's approximately $1 million a year if that holds up. My budget target number is about 900,000. Try to stay at that number somewhere and below. But in running a quick budget estimate this morning on this, we are right in that neighborhood of about 900 to 950,000. That's based upon estimated asphalt costs. We are doing more pavement, so the asphalt costs are estimated. They're estimated high at this time. We don't know what those numbers are going to be. And in a comparison for the 2020 TBD overlay, the county estimated $165 a ton for asphalt. It came in at $95 a ton. And so there was a substantial savings. So what I'm trying to get at is we start playing with asphalt estimated numbers and tonnages of asphalt. And I can play anywhere between 3,500 tons of asphalt and 5,000 tons of asphalt. And I can get numbers from 1.2 million down to 600,000, depending on that number, what the asphalt's going to be. So this is our best shot at it right now to present to the county. And certainly going forward, we will know more, in February, and they go to bid in April, and in May, we can, we'll have a better idea of what the actual number is going to cost as we get closer to that bid process. If it looks like the bid numbers may come in higher than we expect, then we can drop a couple of the paved streets off. The chip seals, it's substantially cheaper than asphalt. But the asphalt is where the price is going to be high at. So with that, I can stand for questions.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bridges, so a while back, we had someone come in and analyze all our streets and the wear and tear. So some of them were worse than others, and that's what makes the difference, whether it's an overlay or chip seal?
Yeah, it's actually, there's three conditions. There's a chip seal is if the asphalt is in really great shape, that is a preservation item. And you want to chip seal that. That's your lowest cost of treatment. Chip seal it and it protects that existing asphalt. The next condition is if the pavement is not completely failed, but needs to be relayed, then that's the overlay. That's more expensive. And then the most expensive is the reconstruction, when the asphalt is completely shattered, alligatored, if you will, cracked up so bad that we cannot no longer repair or maintain it. It's not effective. That's the third case scenario. We haven't got to that yet in our program. And that program you were talking about was Street Saver, and that was done almost 4 years ago now. And so the condition ratings from 4 years ago no longer apply because the streets have deteriorated for additional 4 years. So, but we are following that process. Again, we're trying to work in quadrants, and the Street Saver program said to do a street up in this section of town, another street down here, because that's how they're deteriorating. In practicality and efficiency for the contractor, it makes more sense, and we get better prices if we can, localize those into a certain area and focus all their work in that area. So this year we worked in the northwest quadrant. Now we're working down the southwest quadrant. Next year we'll start over in the northeast and northeast or the southeast quadrant. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bridges. The other thing is for chip seal, how much longevity does this add to the street? I know a lot depends on the traffic and the weather and, things like that, but just approximately, can you, this gives us another 5 years for that, or it's 10, or it's only 3?
Yeah, and
Please.
so asphalt, if I go out and lay a new street, a new asphalt street, that's 12 to 15 year life cycle typically. Chip seal will give you, if I turn around and chip seal that street, I will gain 7 years to 8 years of additional life out of that street. So that's why we're looking at those higher quality pavements to chip seal that. That gives me another 7 or 8 years of additional life cycle. And then you'll come back and chip seal on top of it again. So once you start chip sealing, you're always going to be chip sealing. That is your cheapest, most expensive preservation technique. And that chip seal acts as a protective layer. It seals off that pavement down below. And as long as you don't have any moisture, water infiltration into your base material, your rock material underneath your street, you're not going to see the pavement failures. Does that answer your
Okay.
question?
And then I imagine that someone very clever has come up with a way to do a spreadsheet. So as you go through this progression and the different quadrants, that can go to here, this miles chip seal, okay, add 7 years.
Yep.
And it could be 8 or it might be 6, unfortunate, but I meant, so that kind of thing, if someone came in and said, can you kind of show me where we are and where we are in lifespan, that could be done?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Obviously, we're in the first year of this, so.
Yes, I know, but I'm just.
Yes, we are tracking that.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilor Mack. Councilor Mack, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, question for Jim. Comment first. So, Mr. Bridges, I do want to say that you did a hell of a job this year for what funds you had to work with, and it's a big refresher. I've heard a lot of good things. I'm pleased to drive on some of those smooth streets. However, I don't see Whidbey Avenue on here on the northwest area, and I know we've talked about that, possibly some infrastructure issues that have to be tackled first. But so my concern is if we don't do it next year, do you have a plan, or has that been talked about? Getting a lot of heat because it's a main artery.
Right. And so what we're seeing on the map, this is strictly the TBD. So Whidbey is an arterial street. And so that is actually in the capital budget that we'll bring to the council to approve. Our plan for Whidbey for next year is from SR 20 to Oak Harbor. Beyond Oak Harbor to the west, we have a lot of utility line replacement that need to take place. So Whidbey will be done in phases over the next several years to accomplish.
Okay, because the heat I'm getting is from Oak Harbor up to Heller is where it's the worst.
Right, and that's where we have utility replacement. We are bringing a capital item to the council for storm drain replacement. That is one of our major areas of failure along Whidbey in that section you just mentioned. So,
okay, thank you, sir.
Yep.
Councilor Wiesner. Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bridges, I just wanted to comment. Yes, it's been nice to see the results of the labors. I actually had somebody comment to me, boy, are they going to pave every street in town? Obviously, we hit some streets that were long past due, and there's more to come. And I just wanted to comment and show it's been a good summer. Like, love to see the county crews out there getting it done. Appreciate the work.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'll keep paving. You keep paying the bills. We've got really good bid prices right now. So unfortunately, we're hitting the weather, and we're going to squeeze in, get Bayshore done, just in the nick of time. So, but hopefully we'll see the same type of bid prices next year.
Okay, let me see, no other questions? Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Move on to item number B, 24-inch water main relocation at Campbell Lake for WASDA
That's me again.
plans.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. So hold on, I got to get that one off. We were on a conversation with WashDOT here a few months ago, and they dropped the bombshell on us. Campbell Lake Road needed to be, they were going to start working on a roundabout. And they finally got around to sending us a detail. And if I could pull that up, I'll start sharing my screen here. So this is Campbell Lake Road. And the roundabout's going to go right here. Our water main, or 24 water main, actually comes down along the east side of the road.
Jim?
Yes, sir.
Don't mean to interrupt, but can we mute? I think Chamber 1 is giving a lot of feedback.
Okay. Okay, so I hope this is better. So our water main actually sits either on the edge of the asphalt or actually in the grass along the eastern part of Campbell Lake Road. This is a current picture, and I will, let me stop the share here and bring up the new exhibit we got from DOT. And it is bills. Give me 1 second here. And it's right there. Okay. All right, so now let me share my screen again. This is the exhibit that the state just shared with us. And as you can see, they will be potentially impacting, especially in this area down in here, the 24-inch, not so much up in here, but basically from the roundabout south, as we progress south, they are encroaching in this location. Now, in additional information that the state shared with us, this roundabout is actually being paid for by one of the local tribes. They are going to do some, I believe, some construction in this location, some type of facilities in here, and so they're requesting the state install this, and they're going to pay for it. With that knowledge, Gideon Kaufman, my archaeologist, approached the tribes and asked if we could have a sit down with them to see if they would help also offset the cost of us paying the full price to relocate our 24-inch water main. And so we have a meeting next week with them to discuss that. Right now, the questions we have for the state is, obviously this is a 2D drawing. We don't know if they're going to raise the road, which if they raise the road, do we need to relocate our line, or will be deep enough and not be impacted? Will they lower the road, which would impact our line, which would require the 24-inch to be relocated? Or even if they do raise the road, do they want to take the chance of our 24-inch on there having a problem? Would they make us case it? If they make us case it, obviously I got to take the pipe out, put new pipe inside of a casing, and then rebury it. So two options are good. One option is good. Two options are bad. So right now we're estimating this at about $2.3 million to do this project. There is no timetable for construction. It's all based upon the tribe receiving their funds to do this. Initially, we were told this was set for May for construction. However, the state has come back and said they don't have a timetable for it. They're waiting for the tribe to get all their funds together to do this work. So that's where we're at, and I just wanted to bring that forward to you tonight.
Any questions for Jim on that? Okay. Thank you, Jim. Seeing none, we will move on to our next section under finance, ordinance number 1899, utility rate increase, continued from May 5th, 2020. I think we have...
I can start it.
Okay, our city administrator, Mr. Olborn, will start that off.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start this. Familiar to most of the council members, except for our new council member. This is the fourth time we've had this subject. Just a little wrap up. Of course, we went ahead and delayed the proposed 2020 rate increase, and we did some really number crunching and got a lot of good input from the city council. So we kind of have a little bit of update. This is familiar, but I guess the information changes over time. So we did go ahead and update for some of the new options here. We do have our interim finance director, Mike Bailey, here to assist with the presentation. We also have some finance staff, and the primary person giving this presentation is our familiar Sean Korn. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to go ahead and go through the presentation, Sean.
Thank you, Blaine. Afternoon, Mayor and council members. I'll share my screen here. So this is very similar to what you all have seen prior in our earlier discussions. There are a few changes, as the city manager mentioned, and I will walk through those. I will move through some of the prior slides that you've seen fairly quickly, but just wanted to remind you of some of the key assumptions and input into the analysis. So I'll start over with the overview, key drivers, and then we'll look at any of the changes. I think the key takeaway here from this slide is really providing a long-term sustainable rate revenues for each of these utilities. As enterprise funds, we want to make sure that there is sufficient funding for those operating and capital needs, while we take into consideration the city's financial policies and metrics as we review debt service coverage requirements and overall ending target reserve funds and other needs. As we've talked about in the past, we've had a couple changes as part of this. We've had changes on the solid waste side with the county's tipping fees and recycling rates. You just heard from Mr. Bridges on the change on the water side. We have built that project into this since we've spoken last as part of this. Just as a reminder, we started with the 2019 and 2020 budgets for O&M expenses. We have our revised or current capital plan. This is the one that you all have seen where staff has moved projects, shifted projects to meet the overall goals as we've been working with the council through this process. It does exclude the interpretive center, as we discussed a couple meetings ago as part of that. One point I wanted to mention to make sure that everybody was on the same page, over this time period as we start looking at the projected rates and the reserve funds, is we are utilizing reserves in all utilities in 2021 through 2024. It's not the same for all of them, and I'll have a little more detail on that. We did add the Campbell Lake transmission pipe relocate in 2022 for the water utility. And then we're also looking at we provided one additional alternative for wastewater for your consideration. Everything else is all the same. For storm drain, on solid waste, the primary change is we've smoothed those rate adjustments. So based on our prior discussion during the last meeting, we've made some minor adjustments there. Just a reminder on the financial metrics, debt service coverage ratios, there's really two components that we're looking at. The first is a one-time coverage on all debt. So total revenues less O&M equals at least 1 times the total annual debt service payment. That's the one that we're concerned about as I've been talking with you. On the revenue bonds, or bond in your case, there's a single revenue bond. That is a 1.25 times coverage minimum. We're strong on the revenue bond. It's the all-in debt service coverage that I've been concerned about as we've been walking through this. Also a reminder on the reserve fund balances, we reduced the minimum target for stormwater and solid waste to 20%. We've maintained the 25% for wastewater and water, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. So we've been looking at various alternatives as we've been going through this process. What we have here today is what I've worked with staff to put together based on, and I put this in quote, input and direction. It's the comments that you all have made from council, giving us feedback and input on the analysis. The only changes are the additional wastewater alternative. We've talked about this in the past. We put a scenario together where we use $400,000 of general fund reserves in 2021. And then on the water side, it's the Campbell Lake main relocation. When we start looking at rates or rate impacts, we're proposing and recommending to maintain the current structure or how you charge your customers. And we've simply adjusted the rate levels based on the overall percentage adjustment. So at this point, we're requesting that the council provides us any final direction as we move forward for the adoption process in October at the council meetings and then ultimate implementation the beginning of January 2021. So here's some key points. I tried to expand on a few of these so that everybody has an understanding of some of the information and the analysis that is going on in the rate model itself for each of the 4 utilities. So for water, we're proposing and recommending minimal rate adjustments. We're looking at no change in 2021 or 2022, so 0% change, and 3% annually thereafter. That was impacted by the Campbell Lake main relocation, making sure we meet our target minimum reserve levels over the time frame. We are using approximately $875,000 of available reserves in 2021 through 2024. So we're buying that down, and you'll see that when I get to the reserve chart, how we're using those funds. On the storm drain side, again, fairly minimal adjustments to the overall storm drain rates. That's really driven by the shifting of capital improvement needs. And we're using approximately $280,000 of available reserves in 2022 through 2024. So again, for storm drain, no change in rates for 2021, and then 2.5% annually over that projected time period that we were reviewing. We are meeting our minimum targets for reserves, and we're making sure that we meet those. We're a little bit higher out there, but we also have shifted some capital out farther outside of 2024. And we know as the city's going through the planning process, the master planning process for the storm drain utility, there may be additional capital needs or permitting requirements identified through that process. On the solid waste side, we are recommending revenue adjustments. Currently, rates or revenues are not sufficiently or are not covering at all the overall operating costs. That's really driven by the increase from Island County and their disposal costs, the tipping fee and the recycling rates as part of that. And as we look forward from 2021 through 2022, we are using approximately $570,000 of available reserve funds to minimize those rate adjustments. As I mentioned, as I started this off, in the prior presentations, we provided the council with some various solid waste alternatives. Some had a higher increase in 2021 and then lower in the out years, and then a lower in 2021 and higher. We smoothed those for this scenario. So 9.5% annually in 2021, 2022, and 2023, and then 4% in 2024. So that's our long range look there. As part of this time period, we are not meeting our minimum reserve targets. We're below those, but I call it the happy face slide. We drift down, and then we come back up to our target in 2024. And really in the short term, what's happening is we're utilizing reserves to fund that increase in disposal costs that has been implemented by Island County. On the wastewater side, we've been talking about the necessary rate adjustments to meet the overall operating and capital needs. And so the original plan that we've been working with was a 14.5% in 2021, a 7% in 2022, and 2% thereafter. The alternative that we put together, which would utilize $400,000 of general fund reserves in 2021, would reduce that to 10.5%. We would need to increase 2022 from 7 to 7.5, comparing the base to the alternative, and then increase 2023 from 2 to 6%. That would get us essentially to the overall revenue needs by that time frame. The key driver here, as we've discussed, is maintaining that all-in debt service coverage of 1.0. So when we take total revenues, less O&M expenses, that is at least equal to our annual debt service. So theoretically, that's breaking even. That does exclude the capital component of that, though, any ongoing annual needs that are included in that. Now, just as a point of reference, when we talked about this a little bit in the past, general fund or other reserve transfers or other sources of revenue don't generally impact the coverage ratio. So that adding a piece of revenue like the general fund transfer or getting funds from somewhere else, those are generally not allowed in the calculation of the debt service coverage ratio. We are also not meeting our overall minimum targets. We're using about 1.1 million in the base case and 1.4 million in the alternative in 2021 through 2022. Now, this is not different or very different from what the plan was early on. I'll go way back to 2011, 12, 15, 16. We always had a pinch point about this time in the sewer wastewater rate study. And so this is when we knew we'd be using reserves. That's why the council in the past had ramped up the rates, and this was one of the reasons for that. So the overall adjustment is still there. We need to get to that point as part of that. And that transfer of general fund reserves has an impact on rates, but it's fairly minimal, and I can show you that a little bit. I will show you that a little bit later. Here are the overall annual rate adjustments. You can see there are no adjustments in 2020. That's the year we're sitting in right now. In 2021, so if approved by the council, starting in January 1, then the only rate adjustments would be for solid waste and wastewater. So the green bar is the solid waste. That's the first bar in 2021 on the left. And that's that 9.5% for 3 years, and then we drop down to 4%. The red bar is the base case wastewater. So you can see that's our 14.5, and then we drop down to our 7, and then we go at about 2% a year. The orange bar is the alternative with the general fund transfer. So we have our 10.5, and then we have our 7.5, and then our 6, and then we run back down. In 2022, we pick up the storm drain adjustment of 2.5%, and then that carries on through the 4 years. And in 2023, we pick up the water at 3% in 23 and 24. And so you can see how that would be phased in over the years. On the reserve side, this is a chart you've seen before. There's some minor changes to this on the water and solid waste side. Water still hits above our minimum target in 2024, and we're good in the out years. You can see the use of that $875,000 of reserves is incorporated in this, as well as funding ongoing capital improvements. Storm drain is strong, but again, in the out years, we have several large projects on the storm drain side that will be funded with those available reserves. Solid waste, we drop down as we use reserves to smooth in that overall rate adjustment to customer bills. And then we're short in 22 and 23, but we get back up to target levels in 2024. And then in wastewater, same story as we've seen in the past. We're running slightly below that target out into 2024. In a couple of years, we do make up and get to that minimum target based on our rate transition plan that we have. So based on those overall adjustments, then here is the combined utility bill. So water, storm drain, solid waste, and wastewater. 2020, that's essentially the current rates. That's the rates as they sit today. 2021, we pick up the change in wastewater and solid waste. Storm drain and water, there's no change. 2022, we pick up the solid waste, wastewater, and storm drain component. And then in 23 and 24, there are increases to all 4 utilities based on that rate transition plan. What that looks like on an annual basis, again, is on the combined bill. So what is the total change in the city customers' bills for all 4 utilities? It would be a 9.1% in 21, 5.3% in 22, and then 3.1 in 23, and 2.5% in 24. Just as a note, this is based on the base case wastewater. If the council were to select the alternative where we use $400,000 of general fund reserves, then that would reduce the impact in 21 and 22 slightly, but it increases the impact in 23 and 24. So it kind of pushes down on the front end and pulls that up on the back end to get to the same point. Now, as we've been going through this, I wanted just to give you a comparison based on the input and feedback that the council has provided. The chart here looks at those different structures that we looked at. The red bar, or the bar on the right-hand side, is what I just described as the combined bill change. The blue bar, or the left bar, is the original base case that we brought to the council earlier this year. So that was that original where we were looking at about 6.5% combined utility for the first 3 years, and then dropping down to 2 to 3%. The recommendation here this afternoon, and based on the analyses that we've developed so far, you would see that slightly higher increase in 21, and then fairly comparable as we go out into the out years through 2024 as part of this. Part of that driver in 2021 is the deferral of any adjustment in 2020. Really driving a good portion of that is the wastewater, and then some of the other portion would be the solid waste. So as we go through this, rate adjustments are necessary, and that should say 2021 through 2024, not 2020, sorry. Really to meet our overall operating and capital needs, target debt service coverage ratios for wastewater, and reserve targets for each of the utilities. Again, we can use transfers of reserves. Wastewater is the example we looked at today, but that doesn't change the overall revenue or rate needs for the long term, but it does impact rates in the short term, and it does not impact our debt service coverage ratio. Water rates can be deferred based on what we know today through 2023. Storm drain through 2022, and then solid waste and wastewater do need to have their rates adjusted to make sure that we're adequately funding the operating and capital needs as we move forward. So next steps are to take input and feedback from the council to move forward into the October council meetings, to move that forward to request approval and implementation of the final rates. And so with that, I'll take any questions or comments or discussion. I do have, in this slideshow, I do have the actual rates for the next several years that can be looked at as part of this. And also bill comparisons, very similar to what you've seen before, comparing to other local agencies if the council would like to refresh their memory on those components. Last point, sorry. We're looking at adopting rates for a 2-year period, 2021 through 2022, which would align with the budget cycle so that this information can then be built into the budgets and taken forward. And with that, I will turn it back over to the mayor and council.
Thank you, Sean. I see we've got a question from Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Sean, geez, I just went out the window. Could you show us to refresh our memory, what the rates may look like, please? You said you had 2 other slides you could show. I think it would be helpful, especially for our new council member, but refresh all our memories, please.
Absolutely. So on the water side, this is the fixed base charge. And so it's based on a meter size, varies by meter size. The larger the meter, the larger the charge for residential, commercial, churches, schools, etc. For multifamily, that is a per unit charge. And so that's calculated based on the number of living units in that multifamily complex. On the consumption charge for water, it is a tiered structure for each of the different customer classes. For single family and multifamily, the tier changes by number of living units. So if you have 2 living units, a duplex, then that would get twice the amount in each tier. But it's 0 to 3 CCF. A CCF is 748 gallons. And so you can see how that rate increases as we get above 7 CCF. Through that. For commercial or other non-residential, the tiers are a little larger, and these were based originally around the consumption patterns of each of these customer classes, as well as irrigation 0 to 10. Comparison-wise, as you look at this, we looked at a handful of different utilities here in the area. On the bottom, the dark line and the hashed line are the present and proposed rates. Again, no change in 2021, so there's no adjustment to those lines. And you can see how you compare here to the various other utilities. And I would, guess right about at that median on the water side. We've got some that are higher, Langley, LaConner, Skagit PUDs up there, along with all the customers of Skagit PUD. And then we've got some other folks that are a little bit lower, Marysville, Everett, and others like that. On the storm drain side, it's a flat rate per equivalent unit, equivalent ERU. So for single family, it's $14.22 a month, or sorry, for everybody, it's $14.22 per equivalent unit. And you can see how that adjusts. And then looking at where others are in the area, very similar utilities here, again, pretty in line with many of the other local utilities, right around that $10 to $15 range. And I will say these are fees that are being looked at by a lot of different folks, and that applies to all 4 utilities where they may have ongoing rate studies currently as part of that, or they do annual rate studies. On the solid waste side, it varies depending for residential based on the size of your cart, 20 gallon, 35 gallon, 65 or 95 gallon. And then for non-residential based on the size of it in yards, so the bigger containers or carts, and then the number of pickups. So as we looked at these, you can see, again, right about in the middle here for the solid waste side. Some of these they included yard waste, separately, or they have it included in their rate or don't offer that as part of it. And then finally, wastewater rates, the monthly fixed charge for residential, a per unit for multifamily. And then on the commercial side, there's a base charge and a volume charge. And the same with the schools, there's a base charge and a volume charge. And so that was the baseline scenario. So if you want to compare here, I'm going to look at it the last year to start with in 2024, $130.98. The alternative, where we use $400,000 in general fund dollars, and then up the outer years, we end up $1 higher. And if you look in 21 and 22, 113 and 122 versus 117 and $1.25. So there's some savings early on by using those funds, but we do end up a little bit higher as we lose that compounding of rates to get up to that same level that is necessary. On the comparison, as we've talked about in the past, we are on the far right side of this comparison as part of that, and we've talked through those different situations based on the cost of and the value of that new plant to the city of Oak Harbor. And then Blaine is the most comparable, given they have a similar situation a couple years ago. But again, many of these utilities are looking at the same issues that you have just dealt with your current plant. As the EPA, federal and state requirements become more stricter on nutrient removal, discharges into Puget Sound and the related areas, many of these utilities are looking at similar impacts that they may have to deal with in the next several years. And that was my last slide.
Any other questions for Sean? A lot of work there, I know. Thank you, Sean, staff. We've got some time too. If council has questions, please communicate with us about these, and then we'll move forward in October. Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
I have our interim finance director here. Mike, do you have anything else to add? I know you have some perspective here with working with other municipalities that would help educate the council.
So this is Mike Bailey, and as I told Lisa, I've lost power here in Woodinville, and so I'm on the phone, and I would be able to respond to questions, but like I say, I'll just listen and try and monitor, and if there's questions I can help with, I'd be glad to do that.
So he's lost power, so. Okay.
All right, we're good.
Okay. Okay, we will move on then to administration. Oh, I'm sorry. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess just offhand, I would rather use what I think Sean said, 300,000 of general to offset to make the next year or two a little bit less, instead of 14-point-something% down to 10-point. It'll be a little higher on the other end, but you know, we might get an influx of funds from somewhere else, possibly. But I'd rather even it out more for customers. We may not like it, but the reality is it's got to be paid for, and you can't predict when tipping fees go up 200% or whatever. But I think the statement that we are in compliance, very much so in compliance, that I think it's going to be very hard years for most of them that are underneath us too. It'll be more for them to catch up.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I sort of echo Mayor Pro Tem's, due to COVID, not knowing where we're at, a lot of people, young and old, are hurting right now. Could support something by using the reserves up front. I know it's going to be a little increase, but hopefully everybody will be in better economic and financial position in 23 and 24 to absorb the extra increase. So I'd be in favor of trying to lighten the load up front and pick it up on the back end. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I too support the use of some reserve funds, being a conservative, and we're all conservative, quite frankly, when it comes to the city's money. This is an emergency, what the people of our community is going through, right? This is tough on some folks. So I certainly support digging into some reserves and support the comments by Mayor Pro Tem and Councilor Mack. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Any other input? Okay. Thanks again for a lot of hard work there and moving forward. We will then move on to administration. CARES North Whidbey Island Small Business Relief Program update, and I think for that we've got our Public Information Officer, Sabrina. Sabrina, are you with us?
I am. Thank you, Mayor. Just sharing my screen. So I just want to thank the mayor and council for giving me an opportunity this afternoon/evening to present an update on the North Whidbey Island Small Business Relief Grant. And this is particularly about those small businesses and the CARES grant that you approved in the past and how we're doing on that. So just to recap, here's a breakdown of the numbers that we started out with. So we had the funding that the city received, and half of it that we put towards the grant for small businesses. Then we also received money from Island County. And then as part of that, those combined dollars is what we used for the grant. Additionally, there was the $33,333 for administration costs and supplies. So where we're at right now for a grant processing update is we had 83 applications received, 6 businesses dropped out during the application process, and that was their choosing. They would notify us, we would try to talk to them about what was going on, and then we would just confirm that they were in fact dropping out of the process. 7 businesses did not complete the reimbursement process at all. We tried contacting them and asking them for more updates, but what we were running into is a timeline issue. We wanted to make sure that we got their contracts processed in time, so we were trying to connect with them, and there were 7 businesses that fall into that category. 70 businesses are in the process for reimbursement. So with that, here are the dollars as they look right now. We reimbursed 22 businesses, and some of those businesses are partial amounts. When we send them their reimbursement checks for what they've received so far, we include a notation of what the remaining balance is per their contracted amount. And then we continue to work with them to identify what those additional items are as they requested in their initial application. We also have 47 businesses that are pending. And when I say pending, they may or may not have submitted their reimbursement request. And as part of that, we're working through to make sure they're meeting the requirements from the federal government for the auditors, that they're including all of those details. And I will say kudos to Jay Lovelady, our CARES program assistant, and to Tally Boyer and Jessica for their work in finance, because there is a lot of paperwork that goes into these and a lot of verification to meet those requirements, and they're doing a great job of getting those through. As part of that process, Tally is making sure that we do the reimbursement request to Island County. And so we've delivered $132,920.35 so far to Island County for reimbursement. That includes some administration costs for salaries and supplies. And these numbers are constantly shifting every day because we have new applicants that are being approved and their grants are moving forward for reimbursement. Then the additional grant projects for businesses that we're working on are the Open Air Thursday. So we've been working with the Chamber, and huge thank you to Vicki for her work on the Open Air Thursdays front. We extended it for another month, and she is going to get us an invoice for the charges for the rental furniture and equipment. And then we were able to pull some of the sanitation supplies from our PPE supplies. We also launched the first run of the personal protective equipment, and we just released the second one. So what businesses are able to do is ask for some of those items like masks, gowns, gloves, sanitation options for the future because of the colder weather. So that's heaters and canopy tents. So I'm currently researching that with staff. Overall, we just want to thank you to the mayor, city council, Island County, the CARE selection committee that helped get this started, and local businesses for their work to submit their paperwork, and then our staff that's working on it, because this is a great program, and it is really great to hear from businesses who are meeting the requirements and see what they're able to do with those dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. We've got a hand up here from Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to mention, you might have seen it, but the Whidbey Island Association of Realtors is sponsoring with the Langley Chamber of Commerce some heaters and some tents down in that area. And I think some of their representatives had expressed an interest to see if there was maybe something they could do elsewhere on the island. So maybe you or the chamber could reach out to them.
Yes, Councilman Wiesner. They spoke about that at the economic recovery call 2 weeks ago. We didn't have a call this week. So we're just researching what the requirements are in our community so that we're prepared to address that if necessary. So I will follow up with them as well, but thank you for that.
Great, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem Munns?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much. Just kudos to everyone. I mean, mayor, city council, the county, just everybody. Everyone should take pride in this, and the businesses that went to the effort too should take pride that, okay, they had to admit they had trouble, but everyone should be proud of our community working like a community. So relay that to everyone, but thank you very much to everyone.
Will do, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Goebel.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just to echo what everyone else has said, I just want to say thank you so much for all the hard work to help these businesses out in such an uncertain time. I did have a clarifying question. You spoke about, Sabrina, about potentially purchasing tents or like covering fees for tents and heaters. Is that limited to just businesses downtown participating in the open air Thursdays, or say if a business that isn't downtown wants to potentially kind of request those services or that aid, are they able to?
It's open to all North Whidbey Island businesses, is what we did for the PPE, and so we would probably continue that for that. My big concern at this point was just making sure we were meeting requirements with both the fire department and development services.
Right.
So we would open it up. We just haven't gotten to that level of the whole city or all of North Whidbey Island identified yet, because we're still making sure we're meeting our requirements for those departments.
Cool.
But yeah, we will look at that.
Awesome. I feel like a lot of businesses will be very excited, and as well as patrons of those businesses will be excited about that as well. So thanks.
Sure thing. And just to let you know, when we extended open air Thursdays, we also expanded the outdoor dining options in the proclamation that the mayor signed to include all businesses in Oak Harbor.
Oak Harbor. That's awesome.
Okay, any other questions or input about that? Okay, we'll move on to item number B under administration, city administrators report. Mr. Wilborn.
All right, given the interest of time, rather than go over my 6-page report, I'll just open it up to any questions that the council has on any of the items.
6 pages. Guess I should read that. Councilor Wiesner.
Thanks for that comment, Mayor. And I just wanted to comment, I appreciate you getting this information out to us and getting it out to us in advance of the meeting. We got this information a couple of days ago. I actually did have a chance to read it, and I think it's very informative. I just wanted to tell you I appreciate the timeliness and you taking the time to put it together and keep us up on all the each of the departments. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I know it's really a team effort. I appreciate the contribution from my administrative staff and the department heads in contributing to that. And I think it's pretty important to keep the council updated as much as possible on what's going on with the city. Thank you.
Anyone got anything else? Any other business? Councilor Mack?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Administrator Oborn, one comment here that as we move forward with these utility rate increases, in my opinion, I think you in particular should pay very close attention on how this is going to get released to the public and what they're going to be expecting the first of the year. I do believe it's important. This has to be a soft sell. It has to be an important sell. And I believe the proper verbiage and explanation is going to be critical so we don't upset our constituents and our ratepayers and that type of thing. Would appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess to go along with that, I appreciate the input tonight on the option that we're going to go ahead and bring forward on the 20th. And I think that's part of the reason why when we were talking about this before and bringing it back, we wanted to bring it back in a relatively a longer period of time before the January 1 implementation date so we can educate the public on this rate increase. So certainly appreciate your support.
Okay. Seeing no other business, then I want to thank you all for your work and your time. We appreciate it, and especially your input and your help leading this city. So thank you, council. Thank you, staff. Have a safe rest of the day, and we're adjourned.